So I want to ask this question, right? Why don't we just want to plug in to an experience machine? According to the philosopher Nozick, this is a thought experiment called the experience machine. And the thought experiment asks the listeners or the readers whether, if they're given the chance to hook up their body and their brain to a machine, probably something similar to what you would see in the movie The Matrix. And this machine allows you to only have positive feelings, as though you were in a dream. And there's no fears, there's no timidity, hesitation, losses. There's only good dopamine hitting your brain constantly, non-stop. You probably have a form in which you're the perfect person, with your body being 0%, well, whatever, good percent body fat. Like guys would be really jacked, whatever like that, right? And you have like an unlimited amount of money. Only good things could happen to your life. And most people said they don't want to do the experience machine scenario. They rather live life for the reality of it. And life, sometimes in the reality, there are a lot of anxieties, fears. Sometimes you might make mistakes. You will also hesitate, procrastinate, feel weird, rejection, fears of rejection. And this experience machine thought experiment, if you really look at what the experience machine is, and they compare that to the men going their own way movement, you would see that or even looks maxing and status maxing, you would see that thinking that you need to put your life on pause and look away and walk away. And only when you think you reach the level of status maxing that you desire, or that you think is ideal, or the level of looks maxing, then you would start your life so you don't have to feel any of the negative feelings that comes about from females rejecting you, or feeling not up to par, or feeling inferior. That is pretty much waiting to start life when things are perfect. It's pretty much trying to say, I really would like the experience machine. I really don't want to face the consequences of living life on the real terms in reality. I don't want to beat up with any kind of fears or anxieties or losses or rejection or hurt feelings. I only want good feelings, and I willing to not live and pause and maybe live in distraction or play games, or like just work on gym work, find other ways to distract yourself from like having a real social life with women, because a lot of men think that that is actually a good thing, to work on themselves and pause women for the time being until they're ready to resume. If they're ready to resume is when they think all the cards lined up perfectly. And this kind of notion of the experience machine is exactly the kind of stuff that Nietzsche used to talk about. And three topics that Nietzsche spoke about the most, really hammering on what Nietzsche would have thought about the entire MGTOW movement. These three topics are Ressentiment, which is like resentment, slave morality, and his concept of the ascetic ideal. So first with Ressentiment, right? Nietzsche thinks that if, as human beings, we wired to want and to desire, and we have feelings of lust or just wanting to connect to women and speak to women, and we deny these natural feelings, we negate these natural feelings, and we don't accept these natural feelings, and we choose to say, you know what, I feel as though I went out today and lust was bubbling up, and this is really something that I'm not okay with. You're angry about that, and you know that you have to grind harder and just look the other way and focus on yourself and push down those weird feelings to pair bonds or to communicate with women, whether it's just be connection or lustful feelings. Push down the natural feelings as a straight man to connect to women while you're working on yourself. Nietzsche would say that this type of thing where you negate your natural wants and you just choose to not accept it, that brings in a resentment in your character that is inevitable according to him and is the poison of a lot of men. He thinks that negating natural feelings, but he was speaking about this in context of different religious practices, right? But we're looking at it from the same thing that the MGTOW movement saying is to also reject those feelings and think that those feelings are sins or vices or something like that. And that is really ressentiment according to Nietzsche, and how he would view ressentiment, how he would view MGTW as wallowing and practicing ressentiment, which is something he probably spoke the most of through all of his books. And the other concept that he could talk about with the MGTOW movement would be the concept of the slave morality. And the slave morality, according to Nietzsche, is when you compare your own morality as a good morality, and then you look at something else. For example, you look at female thinking and you say that is bad, when in example in the NGTW movement, men might be saying, as men, we are loyal to the T and we would never turn on a female and we would stick with them forever. But for a female, if you demonstrating qualities like being too frugal with money, or too conservative, or it has being too blasé and too plain and not exciting enough, and she could easily switch up on you overnight like that and begin to hate you and turn on you. And it's like two different ways men and women view things, and there are a lot of things showing now that female logic like that is actually wired into their instinct, and they're not supposed to just accept you for, and the way they watch it, being less than you could be. And that is really when slave morality looks at female morality and female, it really comes from females having a lot more freedom from family movement of feminism, and from a little by little fall of the patriarchy, where in terms of patriarchal structures like religion and cultural stuff that held females down for a really long time, have less power on them, and women have more power because they are working, and they're working for probably more money than most men, better jobs, surely better educated than most men, and attempting to control another person's morality by saying that is wrong and saying that your one is right, and then not being able to succeed in that and judging them as wrong, and then saying, okay, them wrong, so I'm going to go this way and I'm going to ignore them because I do agree with that. Nietzsche thinks that is what you call slave morality, when you look at a next person as a bad thing and then you look at your thing as a good thing, and that would turn into cynicism, and that would lead to contempt, not contempt of yourself but contempt of females, and saying that you find they are contemptible gender and you don't want to deal with them, and you rather just ignore this gender completely, which is really wild, which is probably okay if you are not attracted to females. But if you are attracted to females and you're a straight guy and you have contempt towards something that's supposed to be natural to you, instead of trying to understand it and work with it and accept it as it is, Nietzsche would think that is acting through like a slave morality towards females. And the last one I thought about is his concept of the ascetic ideal, where he would say that in Nietzsche's take on asceticism towards the Christian church, he thinks that walking away from something, walking away, in this case, walking away from our entire dating life, is really not overcoming it by walking away, but submitting and saying that you are a weaker person than this, so you're going to choose not to engage in this. And he think looking away and leaving is a form of submission rather than thinking that you are better than. And that is what in his normal ascetic ideal thoughts towards religion, he thinks that any religious practice that thinks that, you know, you're going to not partake in this and you're better than this, is really just engaging in an ideology and not really dealing with the problem as it is. Not tackling the problem, but just escaping and accepting surrender and having a sort of self-deception that the obstacle that you avoided is you defeating the obstacle and you overcoming the obstacle when it's not. And when you look at the obstacle as something that you walk away from and you just choose not to engage, you're really kind of stagnating your entire being as a person, saying that I could only handle these things if I am a really perfect person, where at least some perfect person to a man being having so much money that he could be a provider role for mostly any woman, because you're like a billionaire status, so somebody must choose you then and somebody must submit to you. So you're saying that you need submission from the obstacle and you need to have all the status max things in your power in order to then have a chance with the obstacle, instead of thinking that you, with just raw masculine intent and presence, could engage with females, understand them, and be able to pass their congruency tests, or shit tests as they used to call it. Pass these things and not just submit to them and walk away. And that, like, also with Nietzsche, he has the saying amor fati. And amor fati means the love of fate. If this is fate of how this situation is and this obstacle is, that men viewing it as an obstacle, then I wish to be nothing but a yes here, he will say, as being a person who practices amor fati, or love of fate. So I was just thinking about, you know, watching some MGTOW comments and videos and stuff, and also being a person that just read a lot of Nietzsche and stuff. I was just thinking, you know, how ironic it is that all these things are just in line, negation and asceticism and slave morality and resentment, how all these things are just a copy of religious practice of abstaining and having a thought of just living and not practicing in these things that are natural, and how much Nietzsche would actually be against the MGTOW movement. I have other videos so you all can check out on Nietzsche topics towards MGTOW. To me, I think it's a really fresh take, and I know a lot of people are Nietzsche fans and a lot of people are also MGTOW. So I just think that there's something to think about if you're a person who reveres the thinking of Nietzsche, but at the same time reveres the thinking of the MGTOW movement.